Hey everyone, welcome back. I have a video today that I hope, will be helpful. And I have the wonderful, beautiful, talented Elizabeth Davis with me. And we wanted to go live, but I was having an issue with my YouTube. And more than that, I'm having an issue with my eye. So I haven't been able to go on because I have this horrible sty. It looks a little bit better, but I can't wear makeup on my eyes. But, I'm going to continue to do this because I don't know how long it's going to be there. But thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here with me because I think that this is, just in the last few weeks after the videos came out with the House employee, with Rebecca, JW, and Joshua Brown, people, and it's fine because that's how we learn, seem to have more questions, right? I see it in my comments. Perhaps you've seen it in yours. But the bottom line is that I think where people are struggling is why wasn't Joshua Brown criminally charged? Have you seen that as well, or is that something
Yes.
that's included?
Oh, yeah, many times. And you know what? I actually have had that same question myself. In fact, in a video, and I think we talked about this in a video I did, I said that I didn't understand myself why Josh Brown wasn't charged. And I said maybe Vanessa Johnson could
Oh,
explain it for us. And so here we are. And I
yeah,
obviously like it makes sense for me at least a little bit. And I think it's just my background in like working at the clerk's office, but if it weren't for that, I would have no idea. I would not understand it at all. Like, I feel like there isn't any exact evidence that says, this child said this about this man and points to Joshua Brown. Exactly that. It's more like he said, she said in a kind of way, but at the same time, it seems like there's so many weird things. Like, how could they not at least take the investigation further, you know what I mean? So I think for me,
right.
my main question is like, why did they close the case if there's so many weird aspects that of things that have happened?
Yeah, those are excellent, excellent points. So I've got some things I want to say. So what I'm going to do is I'll say it, what I planned on talking about, and then you just interject and ask me. And I really hope that this is helpful to
Yeah,
people. You know, get your juices flowing. That's what it's about. But
yeah,
I think that this will clear some things up. So if you did watch my 2+ hour video after, I reviewed the Joshua Brown interview a couple times, and then I did my 2+hour commentary on it. And I said in there, I said, you all, and I'm talking to the audience, you all are the jury. You are, because it's a jury of public opinion. There's a difference between that and obviously a criminal trial and then a civil trial. And I'm going to make some explanations on the nuances of them. But the bottom line is, you guys, you people, everybody that's been watching this, you decide who you're going to believe. And just for people, perhaps if you're new to my channel, I am a former prosecutor. In fact, I specialized in sex crimes in Detroit. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that this clears up some things. So let me just clarify this. This is topic number one. Just because a crime is not charged, it doesn't mean that a crime did not occur. All right. So this can be true in a criminal case with a crime or in a civil case that something didn't happen, right? Just because something wasn't charged in a criminal court or you didn't take action civilly, that doesn't mean that something didn't happen. You could make a decision not to go forward. So the reason that, let's take, for instance, because we're talking about Josh Brown in a criminal case, why doesn't it get charged? So one reason could be that the information, potential testimony, the evidence, it doesn't rise to the level of a crime, or the elements of the crime are established through the victim and maybe other evidence to make an arrest. But while there's an investigation, the detective or detectives, they determine that there's other evidence that's coming in here that could possibly impeach or discredit the victim. Like, we're just talking hypothetically about an essay of a child, right? That's the context that I'm talking about. That could happen. And I'm speaking from my own experience, and I'll interject some, some actual life experiences that I've had that I hope that is helpful. And even though they don't come to the conclusion and say, I don't believe you, child, or I don't believe you, mother, or whatever, they just have to delicately and gently say, I just don't believe that it's enough for us to bring charges that are going to ultimately prove beyond a reasonable doubt that so and so did this to your child because of these other things that are happening. It's just not going to look good, or whatever that may be. So it may be just a difficult case. Another example is this, and this would happen where you don't have a cooperating witness, but you do have evidence of SA through perhaps, it's rare, but like say a picture or a video or a medical report. And then you have the admission or confession of the perpetrator. However, and I'm not saying that, I mean, this does happen, but it's not often, but it does happen where the perpetrator was not Mirandized, meaning he wasn't given his Miranda warnings. Because if they're detained, if they're in custody and the detective or the police are trying to get a statement from that person, they have to Mirandize them first. Anything you can say can be used against you. If you need an attorney, you can get one. Okay. And I know I shared with you, Elizabeth, outside of the recording, where I actually had this happen to me, where I was interviewing for a job, a prosecutor job. It wasn't in Detroit. This is before that. So this was a long time ago. And I had to do a panel interview. That means that there's all these prosecuting attorneys, and they pepper all these questions and you have to answer them. And one of them was, it was on an arrest of somebody for a homicide. And people were outraged. It was like a high profile case. And the only evidence was, obviously the body, but really the significant evidence, and this is a real life crime. This really actually happened. They would take real life cases, and they did not Mirandize the perpetrator. And so they had to throw the case out. And so the people went nuts and were picketing and everything. So they kept on peppering me and asking me, so what do you do? Because people are picketing, they're at your office, they're asking you, why aren't you serving up justice? Okay, well, what's my evidence? I kept going back to that, asking, what's my evidence? And they would tell me, well, you don't have the evidence of the confession anymore. Are you still going to charge? Well, no, because I don't have that. Well, everybody's, knocking down your door and they want justice. So why don't you just let the judge decide? Well, the prosecutor takes an oath. That's not how it works. You have to have the evidence sufficient for probable cause. And if you don't have it, you cannot bring it to a judge. So that's where it ends. And even if you've got a situation where everybody is screaming and clamoring for justice, if you don't have the elements of the crime, and you can't go forward, right?
So they lost the elements of the crime for that because the perpetrator wasn't Mirandized?
Yeah. His
Okay, so
statement could not be used. It's
yes,
out.
and then probable cause, that's like where you have enough evidence to take it to the judge, right, as the prosecutor?
Well, you have enough to charge. You have
Yeah,
probable cause
okay.
for the indictment or for the warrant or the charge, the complaint. There's so many different terms, and it
Yeah,
depends on your jurisdiction.
right.
So, like for me, let me just give you an example. When I was a prosecutor, and let's just use again sex crimes against children. So, if the detective's in there, he's there with his warrant that he wants me to sign because he's put together the package. He's got the child in there. I'm going to do a forensic on the child, and maybe there's other witnesses. I'll interview them all separately, and I feel like I have enough. I make the decision as the prosecutor. It's not the police. They're just investigating, compiling, and bringing it to the prosecutor. And then I would make the decision whether there was probable cause for the crime, and then I would sign the warrant, and then that person would be arrested. Or if they were in custody, then they would be arraigned. That's how it would work. So
Gotcha.
let's talk about the last circumstance of why a crime occurred, but it doesn't get charged. So something happened, and then the crime was timely reported, and the information sufficiently. I got to just turn this off because it's going to keep on blinking.
I had to
It's just
turn
like as
mine
soon
off
as you
too.
get on it, somebody's, blowing up your text. So
Yep.
you have sufficient facts to support the basis of a crime, right? But the victim, or typically in my case, this is my experience, and I'm going to tell you about what happened here. The victim's mother changes their mind, right? So the victim's mother, they'll sabotage it. So this is actually something that happened to me. I had a case where the mother, it was on a Friday night, because I would do a lot of times the warrants over the weekends. I would get extra time, you would get extra time off. This was at the prosecutor's office in Detroit. So that Friday night, in the middle of the night, the mother walks in on her husband essaying her child. So it's the child's stepfather. So she calls the police right away. That's appropriate. They make an arrest of the man right then and there. I mean, it's in the middle of the night. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going in at about, I don't know, 8. So it's just a couple hours away that I'm coming in. And it's nice for me on my desk. The detective's already there with the victim and the victim's mom. So now I have to interview them separately and do a forensic on the child. The detective is there for both. So it's me, the detective, and the victim's advocate when it's the child. And then it's me and the detective and the mother. So I interview, the guy's in custody, and there's sufficient evidence to charge, and I do, right? So sometime between that Saturday morning and that Monday morning, the mother decides that she's going to sabotage this. And she decides she doesn't want to go forward, because I get a call from a reporter on Monday morning saying, we have a woman here and we need to take your statement. And by the way, everything would go through the media. We had a media department. This lady is saying that me, the prosecutor, are claiming that this man assaulted the child and that you're making it up and you're putting all the words in their mouth and this never happened. Mind you, they're the ones that called the police. They
Right.
called DPD. Okay, they called Detroit Police Department. Not me. I don't know you from Adam, right?
Yeah, you weren't the one that walked in on the
But
act.
this happens. This happens a lot.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
it a lot with domestic violence. Why are you here? Well, you
Yeah.
called me. Okay. I used to do domestic violence too. So, it's laughable because I'm like, okay, I don't know these people. I happen to catch that warrant, and they're saying that, you're the one that's putting all these words in their mouth. That never even happened. Well, it was evident talking to this reporter. This woman has a business with the husband. And if the husband was in jail, well, she's not going to have this business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's successful in getting her child to recant. Now, the probable cause hearing happens just days later. Well, I decided I was still going to go forward, even though I suspected that the child was going to recant, because I had the detective who was a witness to what she said and the victim's advocate. But there's this thing called substantive evidence. And in Michigan back then, the outcry, we didn't have that, where it's a hearsay rule, right? We didn't have that rule, which you have in Texas. We're going to talk about it in a minute when we get to Josh Brown. We didn't have the rule where the outcry could be made and then that person that the outcry was made to could come in and testify. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We didn't have that. Had to come from the victim. So I knew I didn't have a case, but the concern at that point was not so much getting a charge against the guy. It was the fact that this young girl is at risk, right? She's at risk now because she's at a house where the mother's lying. The mother saw it. She saw it. That's direct evidence. She would be the perfect. That doesn't typically happen, by the way. You never really get that where you do, but it's very rare where they walk in.
Yeah.
So that's what happened here. So we had to get the AG's office involved. And then I testified in that custody hearing so that the child was taken away from the mother. Okay. But that would happen where they come in and then they recant. Okay. So the bottom line is, just because someone is not charged with a crime doesn't mean that the crime did not occur. And so this usage of, think about it, like you could, okay, just using you, Elizabeth, you could be the victim of a crime, but you decide, I don't want to take it to court. I don't even want to go to the police station. Does that negate the fact that something happened to you?
Nope.
It still
Sure
happened to you.
doesn't. It
It
still
still
happened.
happened to you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think everybody out there can agree with that, right? Let's get there. Let's just use some critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because people throwing out the innocent until proven guilty stuff, I think it just kind of warps and twists your mind, and you're thinking, oh yeah, that's the standard. I'll tell you what, there is no statute that says that, but we'll get there in a minute. So the fact that something happened to me, just because I don't report it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. All right. The truth remains the truth. So this usage of innocent until proven guilty, it's widely used, but there's no such law. People are going to be freaking out. Yes, there isn't. No, there isn't. It comes from the presumption of innocence, which is contained in the due process clauses of the Fifth and the 14th Amendments. All right. So, the Fifth Amendment, everybody knows that the right to remain silent. You hear it all the time. I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment right. I'm not going to talk to you, and you have that right. Now, the standard in a criminal trial is, it's not proven innocent versus proven guilty. That's not the standard. There is no such thing. And people get caught up on that too. Oh, that person got proven innocent. Nope, not in the US. Maybe you're in a different country, not here. So the standard is whether the prosecutor proved the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So when people refer to the criminal defendant being proven innocent, that's just not correct. It's going to be, what they mean to say is a not guilty verdict. Right?
Yeah.
So, and also, guess what? A defendant can be found not guilty, but still actually guilty of the crime. And
Yep.
I know that because the criminal justice system isn't perfect. And I know you're only what, 29, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't know if you know about the OJ case.
Mm-hmm.
You do know about it. That was
and I know about, I used to watch Nancy Grace with my mom as a kid. And
yeah.
so I knew about that because they would refer to it a lot when we would watch other cases that they were getting ready to go to trial, like Casey Anthony or Jodi Arias. Oh my gosh, those two still blow my mind to this day. And they would refer to the OJ trial quite a lot. What's that?
And they were both Florida.
Yes, they were. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think George Anthony was from Ohio, if I remember correctly. Casey's dad. So
I didn't know that.
I think. I can't remember for sure, but I'm fairly certain.
A plug for Ohio. So you knew about OJ.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew that OJ got off, right? But I don't know if there's anyone out there that actually thinks that he's not guilty, that he was innocent of it. The interesting thing is, prosecutors decide what evidence they're going to use. Let me just say this, because what could be prosecuted or charged in one jurisdiction might not in another. It really depends. There is that subjective element. People don't know this, because of the famous chase of the Bronco. That was never submitted as evidence in that trial. And people don't know that. Oh, I don't know if you knew that. It was never submitted as evidence. And is that not such an extremely important and strong piece of evidence to show flight and guilt?
Yeah.
But it wasn't submitted in there. So yeah, so OJ was found not guilty, but guess what? After that happened, then there was already a civil case that was pending. He goes to civil court, where they have a lower standard of proof. They don't, in civil cases, they don't have the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. So that's the highest standard. The lowest one is by a preponderance of the evidence, which is just like slightly over 50%. So that's the lowest standard. And then there's a clear and convincing, which is the middle. And then the beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest, which is criminal. So, the evidence with the beyond a reasonable doubt, it has to be to that degree that the jurors they're convinced of the defendant's guilt, not 100%, just reasonable. They considered it, they've thought it over. There's a reasonable basis in which to find him guilty. There's no speculation or, just speculating on things. It's not 100%. It's not beyond any doubt. A lot of people use that too. I'm really hoping. I know I'm going kind of quickly, but I'm hoping that this helps. So the bottom line, and I'm bringing this back to, it's up to you guys to decide who you're going to believe. When I said that after that video or during that video, it's not about whether a crime was committed. That's going to be very, very difficult. It's who you're going to believe. When you're in a jury trial, there's a jury instruction. The judge will give you the instruction and they tell you, it's up to you, jurors. You are the ones that are going to assess what's coming from the witness stand, what's coming out of the mouths of the witnesses. You assess their credibility. Only you. You can accept all of their testimony, none of their testimony, some of their testimony, and there doesn't have to be a unanimous decision on that. Like you could go and poll each 12 of the jurors, and one juror could say, oh, I didn't really believe John Doe on what he said. And the other ones, oh, I totally believe it. That doesn't matter. It's just getting down to the bottom line. Did the prosecutor meet each of those elements beyond a reasonable doubt? That's it. Because we all have our own, we're filtering it through our own experiences, our own educational, cultural, whatever that everybody has that. We're going to, you and I know that we agree on something, but it would be nice if somebody didn't agree with us on Joshua Brown. Maybe somebody was sitting here and said, oh, I believed everything he said. Well, that's great. Can you articulate why? We can articulate why we've reached our conclusions. That's what's important, is if you're able to articulate it. Passion is great, right? That's why we're here. We're here because we are passionate about what we're doing. We're passionate about the fact that we believe that we're a voice for the voiceless. There are victims, there are whistleblowers, and some of them need a voice. They need a platform. So that's what we've started, right? Or way before, I'm pretty new to this here, but it's been going on for some time. So it's up to you what you're going to believe. And at the end of the day, nobody's going to be able to tell you what you think, and you shouldn't want that. You should want to be able to do the research and figure out on your own. And it's the same with a church. We're seeing that right now so much too. Oh, which ones do I avoid? All of these resources are out there for you, right? The videos and all the information that's coming out, articles, but ultimately it's up to you as to what you're going to believe, right? So I'm talking a lot.
No, it's good. It's good. And I think that your like background and your experience that you shared directly is insightful, because as we get into talking about Josh Brown, I think it's going to help people understand how what you're talking about. And also, you laid a foundation for the audience just now about a lot of just different misconceptions I think people have when it comes to an investigation and someone being charged and then going through a trial and all the different steps. There's just so many steps from where Josh Brown is sitting to if he were to be in a jury trial. There are like so many things that have to happen, and it takes so much time, and people don't understand the timeline of it all. And so it's good to have that background. And for me, I don't really have a lot of questions, just because
this.
I do. And it's just it's like my own experience of working as a deputy clerk. I saw all of that, and I would ask those types of questions. And I learned a lot of that just from asking, not even really, like, I would see certain vocabulary words in the file of a case, or I'd hear probable cause. I didn't always understand what that meant. And so I'd ask questions like that. And so it's good that we have this conversation, because a lot of people just don't know, and it's not because they're stupid. They just literally don't know. They don't. Yeah. And a lot of people are asking these types of questions. Why this? Why that? And it's very good. I think it's good that they're asking, why hasn't he been charged? But there is a reason why.
There is, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's also good to talk about things multiple times. Like some people, they're like, oh, you're talking about the same thing. A lot of it's our attention spans are only so long. I'll
Yeah.
bet you that somebody might notice later on in the video, oh my gosh, you don't have any eye makeup on. Yeah, I said it in the beginning. I said why, because I have a eye. But we
Mm-hmm.
could miss that, and that's life. We just miss
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And sometimes, I'll kind of regurgitate and I try to weave it in the next video, just based upon comments, and I get it. People
Right.
did pick it up on that. And that's why for weeks I've been wanting to, well, since I did that video, I think it was 2 weeks ago that I did it. I've been wanting to do it. And as I shared with you last week, I was like, well, Thanksgiving week is coming, and then
Yeah.
I whatever. Then I had a video I was supposed to do yesterday with Joshua Harris, but I had to cancel that because I really wasn't feeling well. But I'm going to be doing it next week and I'll talk about it. So let's get into the actual crime for Texas. And the statute is Texas Criminal Statute 21.11. Okay, that is, and I checked with the police report because I have the police report relating to the investigation of Joshua Brown. So that is the actual statute. It's called indecency with a child engaged in sexual contact. And you have to define it. So these statutes, they define the words, and then they also give the elements of the crime, right? So, and this is the same when I did this in Detroit. A sexual contact, it has to be of genitals, breasts. I mean, I don't know if I can say it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Too. But that's the body part. It's not going to be your lips or your cheeks or your neck, the kissing of those areas. And I see that people are saying that. We're going to get into that. Okay. That is not what's considered sexual contact. However, so much that we can and can't say. If there's sexual arousal from doing that, coupled with the touching, then yes, it could be. That could be another element of it, right? But in and of itself, that's the bottom line. Just think of it like this. Kissing, no, just it's not in any of the states in and of itself. Okay. If it's accompanied by something that causes that arousal that I talked about, and there's other things, yes, that kissing could be considered. So the crimes against children, or even, an adult, there's two kinds of sexual assault or contact. It's going to be contact touching or penetration. Those are the two. Okay. And so with the penetration, those crimes are heightened. So let me just break it down this is what it was in Michigan. So, and it should be like this in all states, but I don't think it is. So we had CSC, it's criminal sexual contact or conduct, I can't remember, but it's CSC 1, CSC 2, 3, 4. So CSC 1 and 2 was always what I dealt with, the two highest, because I did crimes against children that were under the age of 13. So those are the highest. Number 1 is punishable by up to life. And number 2, I think it was punishable by up to 15 years. I can't remember because it went penetration, touching, penetration, touching. So every single state has their own statute that they have to follow. And they all define it differently, but very similarly as well. And so with Joshua Brown, okay, that is the statute. It was that indecency with a child, engagement in that sexual contact. Okay. Now remember, when this police report, I mean, and it has different dates. If anybody looks at it, they can see. It starts, I think it's in July of 20. Let me, no, I don't have it here. I think it started with a fax. That's the information that came in. And they cite to that statute 21.11, indecency with a child. So what they were investigating was that this 4-year-old or 5-year-old at the time, they're looking back for 3 or 4 years, because it was in 2020 that this allegation of the crime occurred. And what they're saying is the allegation was that a man had touched her, and then it's redacted. So it's going to be the description of the private part, but in the police report, it's redacted. And that the man put his hand in there. That's the verbiage. Put his hand in there. Okay. That could be. And I know from the rest of the police report, it is alleged as a penetration. And we know that because remember, Susie talked about that. Remember when she talked about the outcry? She said that it was a penetration. So that's a heightened crime. All right. And the outcry, meaning when the child says what happened, and it's spontaneous. An outcry would be, we could be drawing or whatever, and there's no there's nothing that preempts it or causes it to happen. It's spontaneous. Like, and this happened all the time. I had these cases all the time. We're at dinner or we're watching a movie, and all of a sudden the child just suddenly says something. All right. And that's when you've got the attention of the parent or whoever that first person is. The outcry to that first person is what's important, because I looked at the Texas law and it's not hearsay. So say in this case that the child who outcried to Susie, which we know, Susie would be that direct witness. She is the direct witness as substantive evidence of the act. It was described by the child. That would come into evidence. The problem is the identity. So bottom line, people, I'll say it 100 times if you need me to. This is why that crime was not charged. The identity of the person who did that act was never revealed. Throughout that investigation to Susie, and we're going to get there, about, Joni talking to her. You remember there's speculation that it was a boy in the school, and then there was the reference because she did say that it was somebody taller than daddy. So they had some things to work with. It's very common for children of that tender age, 4, 5, even 6, to not reveal the identity, especially if it's a family member. I had that experience time and time again for me personally with people in my office. If you research it, it's a psychological, developmental issue. You can look at that. You can go deep dives if you wish to investigate that, because that is a phenomenon that's very common that they don't. And you wonder why. Well, there's all kinds of reasons why. When it's a family member, it's a little bit different. When they're that young, it typically always is a family member. When they're a little, I could remember one where the child was maybe 8 and it wasn't a family member, it was somebody unknown. And that was rare. Now, not only do I have my own experience of my own personal cases, but I had the experience knowing what my other coworkers were doing as well. All the other prosecutors contained in that unit, because we would help each other. We would talk about our cases to each other. I would watch their trials. They would watch mine. So this is a collective experience. And I saw time and time again, if it's a tender age child, it's going to be a family member. That, people think, oh, the white van. And yeah, you want to keep your kids safe, of course. But with a child that age, they're going to be with a parent or a guardian. So the likelihood of that happening, but you see movies and stuff, they're on the playground and somebody, distracts the mother, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and, things like that. But more when we're talking about an SA, it's more likely going to be by a family member.
What would you describe, like what age would you say a tender age child is?
Tender age is like any child under like 8 or 9, in my view.
Okay.
There could be another description for a tender age, but I'm thinking.
But in your experience, that's the age range. Okay. Up to 9. Okay.
Yeah, 8 or 9, I would say. And so, another reason, developmentally, just think about it, just developmentally, a child of that age, they're getting attention, like say they outcried, but they outcried on the act, because that's typically what they say first. It's not the identity. They say it what happened, right? And then how is that response to that person that they're out crying to? That could cause them some stress and a reaction. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's confusing because first of all, it's confusing because it's a person that they love or they believe loves them, did this to them. And then they're having to deal with the reaction, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know what that looked like with Baby Lamb and Susie, but I can just imagine that was a shock to Susie. So whatever her reaction was, perhaps that's why the child did not say right away who it was. The child just said
Yeah.
what happened. We don't know. I'm just speculating, but I'm just basing this on my own experience.
Hmm. And do we know, is there ever been, is there any knowledge as to why a child would outcry the act before identifying who it was? Why don't they say, so and so, I need, like, they did something and then say what it was? Why is it
They
always
could.
flipped?
It's not always flipped. It's not always
Okay.
flipped. I'm just saying
But a lot of the time it's the outcry of the act first.
it. I noticed that.
Yeah.
And you know what? And this is just my opinion, but we would need a psychologist and some studies to support this. But I feel like just based on what I saw, they're kind of getting the temperature of
Yeah.
the parent or whoever. Can I share this? Is this safe for me to say? Is this weird? Maybe the child can't articulate that this is a weird thing that
Right.
happened, right? So they're just kind of sharing that, and that I've
That's
seen
what
that
I
a
was
lot.
thinking too. Like if when I was a child, I was a pretty timid child, and yeah, that's totally something I would have done. And that never happened to me, thank you God. But if I were to have, I remember how I thought as a child, and I was very timid, and I would have led with what happened, especially like you said, if it's someone in the family that they say they love you and the child probably loves them back in some way, um, then yeah, that would be very, I would think scary for a child to share. Would have been scary for me as a child. And I don't know, I guess I just have a really good memory of my childhood, but I just remember being very timid and like, always kind of tiptoeing and not wanting to make anybody angry or like upset anybody about anything, period. It could have just been the smallest thing that would have never upset anybody. But because I was so timid and I wanted to please my family and I loved them and I didn't want to get in trouble, yeah, I would think a child in especially like that, that's more timid would probably tiptoe.
Right. And then think about it in the context of Baby Lamb with Susie. So again, this is my opinion. She's feeling her mom out. Remember, they go
Right.
to vacations with the families. If so, I'm not saying who it was. I'm just saying if it was Josh Brown that the child was referring to at that time, but not saying his name, if that was the case, she was feeling out her mom because that's a family member. They
Right.
live, what, 2 streets away.
Yeah.
They're all working together. They all go to Daystar. So the child is feeling that out.
Mhm.
Okay. And I've seen that time and time again. Um, it also it's very confusing for the child and shame. We don't know what the
Yeah.
person who did this said to them. Don't ever tell. There's all kinds of things. If you do, you're never going to see your mommy and daddy again. That was very common. I would see that and hear that. And I suspect that's probably my opinion, but I suspect that's probably what Joni said to the child
Yeah,
because
that's what I
at
always
that
thought as well.
age, yeah, it's not the dolls and things like that. It's mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
That's your identity right there is your mommy and daddy, or even a
Yeah, and
pet.
especially their family, Jonathan and Susie are very close. It's a very close-knit family, and I would think too, like you said, them going on vacation and stuff together, and Jonathan and Susie raised their kids the same way I was raised, respect your
Respect your elders,
family and
right?
be kind and love the Lord and all those things. And so of course a child is going to naturally be like hesitant or unsure or just inexperienced in
They
confessing
don't know.
any
Right.
unusual thing to their parent, especially if the child is raised in a stable home environment. Like, this didn't happen within their home, Jonathan and Susie's home. This was outside the home, even though it was with another family member. The child had a very safe space with her parents. And so, I don't know, it's just so, there's just
It
so
is,
many different ways you could look at it.
and it is, and that's how you have to look at it, because you know some comments, I get it, we want to grow, we have passion, we should have passion, we especially when there's a child who's in danger and has been, and we know that that happened. I mean, that
Yeah,
happened, right? There's no reason to think it didn't happen. So that's where I am. If you want to believe that it didn't, that's on you. We hey, we all have free will. We all can make our own decisions, right? And we all have our own opinions and impressions, and it's fair. Can we have a discussion here as to what our thoughts are, and how, and to be able to articulate it is really what I'm looking for,
yeah,
and to help people on this platform with this channel on how to look at things, because there's a big difference between something happening, and it doesn't, just because it doesn't go to a trial doesn't negate the fact that it did in fact happen. I again believe that something absolutely 100% happened to baby lamb. Children don't just spontaneously make that stuff up. It just
right.
doesn't happen. Then you add on and it compounds because you've got the weird behavior and the things that have come up with Josh Brown. So
Yeah.
we can talk about that too. But so getting to his interview, what was interesting was that, to me, when I was looking at, in conjunction with watching his video, but also going through the police report, it's clear that what they were investigating was that penetration allegation. But you know what, Elizabeth? You never heard the detective ask about that.
Yeah.
Never once. It was really focused on what people saw, like kissing, inappropriate kissing and touching, which, as I said, that kissing in and of itself, that's not a sexual act under the statute. The statutes have their own definitions, and that is not in there. So, period, full stop, end of story, not gonna happen. Okay.
So why is it, and if you're going to talk about it, let me know, but why is it that the detective never asked about the penetration?
I know. Troubling. I don't
Yeah.
know. He never directly asked about any sexual touching, because, again, what did I say in the beginning? I defined it. It's going to be the genitals, the breasts. That's the sexual touch. That's in the statute. All of them. Every state has it. When I okay, when I'm looking, when I was a prosecutor, there was never a time where, oh, the warrant is the guy kissed the baby boy or whatever. What are you bringing this to me for? That is
Yeah.
not a sexual act. Could it be an assault? Maybe, I don't know. But it's so far fetched. It wouldn't be coming across my desk in sex crimes. Again, what I said earlier, could a kissing be considered under that statute? Yes. If it sparked that arousal, remember the sex
Yeah.
arousal coupled with the other things, yes, it could. But I never had across my desk just a warrant that says that, like, for instance, with what this detective was asking Joshua Brown about the kissing on the face and the neck and the lips. Never. That never came across my. It's going to be body parts that are sexual, genitals, and it's going to be either the touching or the penetration. That's
Yeah.
how it falls under the statute. But yes, Elizabeth, it was very, very strange that the detective never directly asked about a particular touching in those areas or a penetration in that area. And I commented on that in my 2 hour plus video. I probably said it was strange or it was odd. Yeah, that left me with the question, why? Why didn't we hear the detective ask? Now, I think I also said in that video, could there have been parameters that Josh Brown's attorney set before they went in there? That's possible, but I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I would have done that. I've done that before. Here are the parameters. This is what you can and can't ask. He might not have allowed him to. However, there was only one point in time where, and you saw this several times, where the attorney took over and he would direct, right? And there
Yeah.
was one time where that attorney said, and you, because he was leading, which he
Mhm.
can, he can lead all day long. That's another thing people are commenting. He was leading and he can't do that. Yes, he can all day long. And then some. This is not an interrogation. He's in there voluntarily.
Mhm.
And guess what? Josh Brown never had to say a word. His attorney could have done all the talking and answered all the questions if he wanted to. That's the way it works. So getting back to the attorney starts directing and says, you never touched her and you never did any inappropriate touching. I think he said it like that. And it's a leading question. And of course, Josh is going to agree. And he did. And it was left at that. No follow-up questions about it. Where he could have, okay, let's talk about, remember that sleepover. Josh said no. All right. That never happened. Well, that's now on record, because say in the future there is a crime that's charged, right? And say Baby Lamb says that it happened during a sleepover. Well, you already got Josh Brown saying it never happened. Well,
Mhm.
that can be used against him. That can be used against him. So that's not going to look good. But I would have liked to have seen the detective go further and say, okay, so no touching ever. So no touching ever at Daystar, no touching ever at the beach house, no touching ever at Jonathan and Susie's house, no touching ever at your house, right? I would have just done that, because it's giving him the opportunity to say no, say no, say no, which could bury him in the future in the event, a crime is charged. But let me just say this, because everybody, Josh Brown can't be charged with a crime involving an essay against a child simply because he's a liar. So if you've come to the conclusion by watching that video, or even before that video came out, and you believe that he's a liar, that isn't in and of itself elements of a crime. You can be a liar all day long and not charged with a crime. Does
Yeah.
that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, it
So
does. And he I think that he shows a lot of characteristics of a liar. And I do think it's interesting that you say he could, if the sleepover potentially did happen and he's potentially lying about that, that could be used against him. Um, did Susie, I can't remember, did Susie say that they had sleepovers before? I can't remember.
I thought that there was,
I thought
but
there was too.
I really do.
Like,
And maybe somebody can comment and confirm that. But
hmm,
I do believe that there was.
yeah.
Now, I believe that in the report, I could be wrong, but I believe in the police report. When I say report, I'm talking about the Colleyville police report. I thought the address that it occurred was Jonathan and Susie's, but I'm not 100%. So that would mean that it would have happened at their house.
Yeah.
So I'm
Okay.
not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if it only, we don't know if it just happened once, twice, three.
Hmm.
We don't know. There still remains that mystery. So we don't
Yeah.
know. So the outcry witnesses, I talked about that. Um, but again, this is the bottom line. I think I've shared enough on that kissing thing. That's why, people are like, well, he was kissing her, and that's not going to be under that statute. That's why that was not charged. Okay. I think that the detective was trying. He was trying. He was
Hmm.
giving every opportunity to ask questions of the house employee, Sylvia, of Rebecca and JW, and even of Joshua in regard to touching and kissing, because perhaps he could have gone in that route, but he just didn't have enough evidence. So that's out. Okay. So that, you know, let's talk about this. So that exposure, allegedly inadvertent exposure of Josh Brown, remember, in the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom the year
Yeah.
before. So that would have been in 2020. That isn't in and of itself a crime. Maybe we do it that way. That isn't a crime, okay? Because that can easily be dismissed as a one off and just something that, was an accident.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, because these are red flags, right? When you
Yeah.
put them together, in my opinion, I wouldn't want my children or anybody that I care about, any children. I love children. I wouldn't want children around this person. Full stop. Okay, that's where I go with this.
Yeah, me
But
neither.
remember some of the red flags. You've got Susie saying when baby lamb's a baby, she's changing the diaper, and then over her shoulder is Joshua Brown staring. Is that a crime? No. That in and of itself is not a crime. So we've knocked that one out. We've knocked out the inadvertent exposure. That's knocked out. The second thing that happened when Joshua Brown follows Baby Lamb up the stairs, and Baby Lamb is in the bedroom with her brother's in there. We don't know exactly where, but her brother's in there, and she is now nude because she is changing. That in and of itself is not a crime either under the statute. And if you say, well, what about another statute? There isn't another statute. This is the statute.
Yeah.
That's the statute. Okay. So we've knocked that one out. What's the next thing? Okay. He's going over to the house to try to play with them and wants to, show me your unicorn. Okay. It's odd. Again, all of these things are red flags, but that in and of itself is not a crime. Really hard when it's a family member. People don't understand like the dynamics, I think, with SA of children and the dynamics, because it's always going to be, well, not always, hate to say those conclusory words, but most of the time it's a family member.
Yeah.
So you're navigating through this weirdness with the family, because just like we see in the churches with exposure and cover up, people just love their pastor or leader, and they're going to stay on that side because they don't want to believe the worst. They don't want to believe a bad thing. But then you have people that, hey, just because I like him, that doesn't mean he can't do wrong, and he did do wrong, and it should be called out. Right?
Yeah.
So bottom line, the behavior, while troubling, if you've watched the video, not an interrogation video, the interview video by the police detective of Josh Brown, where his attorney's with him, if you found his posturing, his demeanor, his responses, things he would say troubling, well, I agree. I found them to be troubling myself, very me-centered. I didn't feel like he had zero credibility in my view. When I started my channel and I posted my very first video this year, it was on January 1st. It was after 6 weeks of watching the Daystar scandal. I didn't know you. I knew who you were. I was watching you. I was watching Ray Curry. I was watching Rock, Laura Lynn, Everett, Brother John. Brother John, I've been watching him before. I've known who he was longer than any of you guys. Like, I've watched him because he was covering Mike Bickle. So I would watch him regularly because he covered that a lot. I don't know who else I watch, but in any event, so when I did my first video, I didn't know Jonathan and Susie, and nor did I ever think that I would, I was just doing the video. I was trying to be helpful because I happen to be a former SA prosecutor. And so I stated in that video, I said, I watched the testimonies that were given by Jonathan and Susie a few times, and I found them to be 100% credible.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion, and I have every right to hold it. And that anybody that, if you differ in your opinion, if you believe something, that's your right, right? I have a right too to look at that video by Josh Brown, and I've come to my conclusion, he is not a credible person. I would never want him around children.
Yeah, me neither. So many things he does, even though they're not a crime, are still really perverted and creepy.
Right.
And it would make me
Yeah.
uncomfortable as a mother, it would make me uncomfortable as a child, it would make me uncomfortable as a woman, just period. Period.
And it does, then you start down that process of what's going on with Rachel Lamb. How does she
Yeah.
not see some of these things, right? Because, okay, we just talked about all of the red flags as it relates to baby Lamb, but we also know that there was a credible young man in Australia who also made an allegation against Joshua Brown.
Mhm.
All of these things are not in a vacuum, right? It's a
Yeah.
picture, it's a puzzle, right? And so here's my bottom line. And I think I've shared this with you too, with you off camera when we talk. Somebody who essays children, they don't do it in a vacuum. It's not a one-off. It just isn't. And there's variations of it. Some of them like to do certain things. Some of them like to get pictures or videos and then they replay those, or they take something of the child. It's like a trophy. Based on my opinion, it could very well happen where somebody comes forward that was a victim. That could happen.
And if that happens, and it's a separate incident, could this investigation or this interview with Josh Brown be used against him in another case? So
Not
it would
necessarily.
always be
Well, it
separate.
not necessarily. It's tricky because so this is a legal term. It's called a 404B witness. All right. So in different states, we call it different things, but that's the federal rule. So 404B, it's an evidence code. And so when I was a prosecutor, that's what we always wanted was a 404B witness. What is that? That means an other acts witness. It's not one that you're charging on. So you have your child, that's your victim, right? Your
Mhm.
complaining victim is that child. But then you learn, and this would happen where the statute of limitations ran. So that's how it would happen with me. So I've got, say, my child's 8, right? And I've charged on that. And then this adult comes walking in and says, "Oh, I'm a friend of the family. I heard that you charged on that." Well, that guy did that to me 20 years ago. But I worked in that prosecutor's office over 20 years ago. So there was a statute of limitations. I think it ended in the late 90s, but there was a statute of limitations. So I'm thinking about one case in particular where the young lady, she was in her 30s. I couldn't charge on for her,
Mhm.
and so she was my 404B witness. So she testified because it's similar acts. It's a mode of operation. It's lack of mistake. I would have to pull up the evidence code to tell you exactly what it is, but
Yeah.
we used it all the time. And you use it, I mean, every single prosecutor will use it in those cases. If they have another victim that is not charged, it would be called a 404B witness. Now, say hypothetically somebody else comes forward, and whether it's Colleyville or a different state, right? And they charge
Mhm.
against him, Baby Lamb would still have to identify that person in order to be a 404B witness.
Right. Mm.
So,
That's
yep,
what I was wondering. Okay, that makes sense.
yep. You have to have that underlying aspect.
Yeah.
The act, what happened, and who did it. Okay. So again, we have a lot of red flags, but we just don't have enough to charge a crime. My question, why wasn't Joni Lamb ever charged? That's my question. Because she could have been charged with obstruction of a witness or tampering or obstruction of justice or tampering with an investigation or with a witness, because we already know from Susie, and we know because it's referred to in the police report. Susie says in there, and she's shared that baby outcried to me. I wanted to go to the police. Joni says, no, bring the child to me alone. I mean, horrible, horrible.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Baby Lamb walks out of that interrogation, whatever happened in that room, and never talks about it again. So you have enough evidence, in my opinion. I don't understand. And you don't need Joni to come in because we already know she didn't come in to be interviewed. in that Colleyville police report. She didn't come in. And again, that related to the investigation of Josh Brown. I don't know if there's a separate police report in regard to the investigation of Joni Lamb on that potential obstruction of justice. I'm not sure if there is, but I wonder why. Because as a prosecutor, that's what I would have gone after. Okay, I can't get that, but clearly we've got something going on here. This child's not talking, and this and this and this happened. Why would you not charge her? So
was any of this evidence ever brought to a prosecutor by the detective, or did they not ever even go that direction?
I think that they did have communication. I remember hearing that maybe Julie Roy's in her videos or articles. I do recall hearing that they were talking to a prosecutor. That's not uncommon, because same with me. I mean, when I was a prosecutor, I knew about more crimes than I charged, right? So you're on call, right? Because stuff happens 24 hours a day, but
Mm-hmm.
you're also there to help and assist the detectives. So they might be on a cold case, or they might be investigating this and it might be taking a while, and they're going to bring you in because you're the lawyer and they have questions to ask. So yeah, I'm sure that they brought in a lawyer at points. Okay, what do we need? We need some direction here. What do we need for this? Where do we go? Probably, I'm just assuming. I mean, that's just based upon my own experience. We did that
Yeah.
all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really all that I have, and we're at an hour. Do you have any other questions, Elizabeth?
I don't, but so whenever they closed the case, do they show this? I guess I have this is my last question. Do they show a breakdown of how they came to their conclusion to not pursue anything, actually charge him, or how did the case become closed? And do
Because
they provide any reasoning for that?
yeah, when they closed it, they have to say why. They don't. It's
Okay,
insufficient or lack of. I think they use the term insufficient. That's typical. Insufficient or lack of evidence of a crime.
gotcha. Okay.
So again, going back to why wasn't he charged? Insufficient evidence of a crime. And some people out there, I've seen the comments. They're like, "Oh, but she did say who it was." She never did. She
Yeah.
never said who it was. So without that, there's no crime that can be charged. There's no identity of the person to charge. And so after they completed what they needed to do, they brought in certain people to question. They had evidence. I mean, it's a lengthy police report.
Yeah.
So it's not for a lack of trying. I suspect that they did what they could. Of course, I have some questions as why you did certain things, but at the end of the day, that was a very thorough report. And at the end of it, you have a summary or a conclusion, and it says we are closing the case now because of insufficient or lack of evidence. And particularly, they don't have the identity of the person. And then, as it relates to the touching and the kissing, that doesn't rise to the level of a crime.
Hmm. It's a bit of a shame, wouldn't you say?
It is strange, but that happens. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen that time and time again. And it doesn't, and you know what? Colleyville police have said it time and time again too. They're like, it's closed for now. Kind of a good thing that it was closed, right? So that the FOIA request could be made, so that
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan and Susie could get those videos. Because
Yeah.
if it was an ongoing investigation and it remained open, they couldn't have gotten those videos. Can they reopen it? Absolutely. There's no reason why they can't. They can reopen it. And guess what? There is no statute of limitations in Texas. So if the daughter is 25 and she discloses, then and it's him that she identifies, charges can be brought then. If she's 55, charges can be brought then. There's no statute of limitations.
Good.
Most states are moving towards that, if they have not already, when it comes to child SA. So, yeah. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. It was definitely helpful for me. I mean, yeah, like I said, foundation that you laid at the beginning and just explaining your experience is, I think, tremendously helpful. So, for me at least. We'll see what the comments say. Everybody has something to say.
Exactly. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on here with me this Sunday afternoon. It's always
Yeah,
a good time to be with you.
of course. I love it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So I will talk to you soon. And
Okay.
anybody, you guys, I look forward to hearing what your comments are. I hope really that there's some clarity here. So talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye.